Hi there, I wanted to show you this little video tutorial of how I would stylize this image and make it look a little bit more interesting. So this was taken at White Sands in New Mexico, and I just really love these banal scenes of these chairs and tables where you can sit and have a picnic in this big concrete space with the white sand dune behind you. Imagine it in 40-degree heat, sitting there sweltering, surrounded by this white reflective sand and just cooking away. But anyway, so I just want to put a new sky in and muck around with some of the tones and just see what we can make of this. So it's going to be a bit of a discovery, but an exploration. Not even sure where it's going to go at this stage. First thing I want to do is select the foreground, and I've done that already because I thought I'd just be able to do a quick selection tool and it'd be nice and easy. But quick selection tool only picked up some of the areas, and then I had to go in with the lasso tool and fix it up. So I've done that already. I didn't want to waste your time showing you how to draw a line, straight line across a sand dune. So I've done it already just to save time. I'm going to invert that, Command Shift I or Control Shift I, and that'll give us our foreground selected. And then I'm going to select and mask, and I'm going to, I can pretty much go from there, but I might just smooth it out by a pixel or two, feather it a little bit, and then bring the contrast up just to see how that edge goes, just to give it a bit more going on. And let's just zoom in and have a look. See, it's pretty straight. There's a few curvy bits in there, so maybe we can just fool around with some of these other settings to see what it does. You can see that's helping a little bit. Might feather it a little bit more, just see if that can take away that straightness. Doesn't really do a great deal, but it does. It is nice to have that. We can use a smart radius as well, and click on that and just bring that radius up a little bit. And with these settings, I tend to muck around and just push sliders around until I'm happy. And you can see now that's got a bit more of a sort of a bit of an edge, but we'll have a look at that in the finished product and see if the sand dune does look okay or whether it looks a little bit too cut out. Okay, all right, we're going to output to a new layer with layer mask and then click OK. And we're going to zoom out, Command 0, Command minus, just to give us a little bit more of a view, or Control minus. Click on the background layer there on the eye just to bring that back. And I've got another lead F on the keyboard a couple of times, gets me back to the full screen. I'm not a tabs guy. I can't stand tabs, so I work the old school way. I like to be able to see my desktop and what's going on around me. Some people will say that's crazy, but that's what I am, a little bit crazy. I'm going to grab this sky and bring that into that image there. And I'm just going to reposition that and look at where you kind of want to line up the skies where you think or the horizons where the horizon should be. And I think the horizon's around there somewhere like that. It's pretty close. I might just come down a little bit more. And I'm going to go Command T or Control T, and I'm just going to drag that corner out just to fill that sky up. Now, just by adding that sky to that image, all of a sudden it's starting to give it more depth and makes it look a little bit more interesting. I like the color a little bit better. If you turn it on and off, pretty banal to something a bit more dynamic. Like all my skies, I'm going to duplicate that layer, that sky layer, and I'm just going to change the blend mode down to screen, and that's going to lighten the sky because it's a little bit dark at this stage. That's obviously too light, so I'll just bring the opacity back a little bit. And I'm looking at that edge there, and I want that edge to be fairly good. I don't want it to look like there's any halo or line or whatever. And if there is, sometimes I'll just go back in post and fix it up. You can see here it's a little bit jaggedy, but it's not too bad. It's pretty good. It looks a little bit cut out. So I'm going to go in now and I'm going to add a layer mask to that area, that layer, top sky layer, and then I'm going to go G for gradient, and I'm just going to draw a gradient down like that, and I'm going to click and drag, and that's going to darken off the top of the sky. You can see there, if I hold down the shift key and click on the layer mask, that's before, that's after, before and after. I think it's a little bit strong still, so I'm going to hold down the shift key, grab my point of my gradient from up higher and drag it down like that, and then maybe even a bit higher again, and drag. Whee! Don't you love that? Thank you, Photoshop. So let's see what that's done. That's a little bit too much, so I'm going to just go back here again, shift click and drag, and it should be just that top. Oopsie, sorry. If I just shift click on the layer mask, so now I need a bit more. So it's just a feel thing where you're happy, or where it ends up is where you are happy for it to look. Now I'm going to just bring the opacity of that layer up a little bit as well, just so it's a little bit lighter near the base of this hand dune. Okay, looking pretty good so far. Now I'm going to start thinking about the tone. You can notice there's a bit of a pinkish sort of tone. So obviously that was photographed, that's a reflection from the ground, but this is all white here, so that pinkish sort of tone shouldn't be there. So now I'm just going to think about how I can take that out. And I'm thinking what I might do is create a hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm going to click on this little clipping icon here, so it just clips down to that sky. And then I'm going to click on the colorize button and bring this around to like a kind of a bluey color like so. So now by doing that, if you turn it on and off, you can see that that pinky tones have gone, and it looks much nicer like that. It's a nice little way of doing it. I quite like this, the way the foreground looks like it's got this darker foreground. It's like a vignette. It's almost like the light sort of come through, and I might just accentuate that light a little bit. So I'm just going to go do a curve adjustment layer, blend on screen. Oopsie daisy, that's actually snapping down there. So I'm just going to drop this back. Let's see, I'm going to take it to the top there. There we go, that's better. Just put it on top of that layer. Now it's affecting everything, obviously. So I'm just going to invert that layer mask, as white is revealing it all. So Command I, and then I'm going to B for brush, painting with white as my foreground color. Bring the brush up, drop the opacity of the brush down to 30%, so 3 on the keyboard. Click once on the left and follow that through to the right, and just get a couple of straight lines there just to accentuate that. And then I'm going to drop my opacity back to say 10% and just feather that edge there. So it's just starting down, lighten it up a little bit through that foreground. Sorry, trackpad problems here. Okay, and there. So let's turn that on and off. We can see we've just added a bit more light through that foreground. It's a little bit dark there, a little bit heavy. It's looking a little bit better. Okay, now what I like to do as well with these images is I like to mess around with the tone and try and add try and pull a bit of mid-tone detail out. So my favorite, I go to my LUTs, I go to my favorite LUT, which is my teal and orange, and this will give me the color tone that I like. You can see now it's gone, the sky's gone fairly kind of greeny color, so you want to pull that back a bit. So you take it back right off and then just move it up to your happy. So I like it somewhere like that. It's about 50%, maybe a little bit less. And it just takes away that magenta look out of the sky, especially at the top there. You can see it. It's kind of nice. Then generally what I'll do is I'll duplicate that layer, Command J, and I'll change the blend mode to screen. Now that's going to open up my mid-tones a little bit. You can see that it's looking quite nice through the foreground. Sky is going a little bit lighter, but it's not too bad. I'm not dissatisfied with that, but I may just add a gradient. G for gradient, and I'm just going to paint that down a little bit just to bring the sky back a smidgen, like so. And if I turn that on and off, you can see now it's just adding a little bit more light, and it's giving that real kind of washed out vibe that I really enjoy. Now the other thing I would think about with this image is, do I want to keep it like this? Do I want to crop it square? So I will have a bit of a muck around. I'll C for crop, that's my 2:1 ratio. I'll go up to a square crop, and you can see when I do that, you can see what's outside of that, the extra sky that's out there. So let's just return and get that square. So that's our square crop, which is quite nice. Or wide or square. I'm thinking probably square. Yep. Okay. All right, so we've decided now it's going to be a square image. Kind of happy with that. And I just want to add a little bit more of a pop in that. We can zoom in into this seed here. So I'm going to go and do a hue saturation adjustment layer. Click on the little hand, and I'm going to click on the color, and I'm just going to bring that saturation up so that will pop. Now, if I turn it on and off, you'll possibly see, yeah, that the barbecue there is getting a bit more orange as well, but I want to just accentuate that part, so I'm going to invert that mask. Select B for brush, paint with white as my foreground color, 100% opacity, make my left square bracket, will make the brush a bit smaller. Click once, hold down the shift key, click a second time, click once, shift key, and back and forwards. And then that will just mean that the only thing that's going to get colorful is that chair seat and the table. So I zoom out, and I like that. Now we've got real oranges and real blues, pastel blues, and that nice bright orange, and they look pretty nice together. At that point, I'd say, yep, I'm happy with that. So I'll flatten it if I was that way inclined. Some people don't like to, but I don't care if I flatten it, because I can always go back and redo this if I need to. And now I'll start to look at the edge of the frame and go, what is distracting? And I see this point up here, which is distracting to me. So I'm going to go L for lasso, Shift L to change through to the one that I want, which is just the freeform lasso tool. I'm going to select that area, and I'm going to hit delete. It's going to bring up the fill dialog box, and I'm going to fill it with content aware and hit return, and then that problem is gone. Command D to deselect, so all of a sudden that area looks much better. And then I'll just go through the image now and look for dust spots and anything that stands out as being a bit ordinary. If I hit S for stamp tool, stamp clone tool, I will bring my brush down a bit smaller. I like to be nice and small when I'm doing these sort of detailed areas. 100% opacity, 0 on the keyboard. Hold down the Option or Alt key, click, and then paint over that area there just to get that looking a bit better. I can see that that's added a little light patch there. I'm just going to go in there and fix that up. So that was distracting. I see that's disappeared. There's a few others around, but you get the general idea. Now, when I'm looking for dust spots in the skies, sometimes they're difficult to see. So what I'll do is I will go in and do a levels adjustment layer, change the blend mode to multiply, and then I can generally see, I might bring this down a little bit as well, and then when I zoom in, obviously you got to select the background, and you can hit your healing tool, J on the keyboard, zoom in at 100%, and when you've got it a little bit darker, it's much easier to see the dust spots. But I'm a little bit surprised that this isn't too bad. Also, the other thing that I do is I'll hit F on the keyboard to get a full screen view with a black background, and that makes it much easier. Look, there's a dust spot there, so just rub over that, gone, and just work my way through the image. If there's anything that looks like a dust spot, just get rid of it. And I'm not going to dust this away. It's actually pretty good. I'm actually quite surprised. I think it's because this sky, it's a little bit soft, and I did hand hold it, I think, and basically I just wanted to capture this guy because it was pretty cool. Put it in my sky library. So yeah, you can see it's a little bit, would have been a wider aperture, so the dust spots are less visible. So I'm pretty happy with that. Once I've finished, I go back to this levels layer 1 and delete that, and then zoom out, and there's our image. It should be spotted at that point. Now I would save it and go and make a lovely print of that, but I quite like that. The other thing I like to do is go and create a bit of a edge, a white border. So I bring up the canvas size option dialog box, and it's a Command Option C is the shortcut. And then I'm just going to make sure the relative box is ticked. I'm going to put 9 centimeters by 9 centimeters in white, and that just puts a nice little edge around it. Hit tab on the keyboard, give me my full screen, or F. Now when you get to this, if you've got a white screen like I have, and you've got the white border, sometimes you can't see it. The best way to make it visible, I've found, is if you go to crop and then back to your move tool, V on the keyboard, all of a sudden you see that little border. I reckon that's a cool contemporary looking image. I love it. Thanks guys, hope you enjoyed this tutorial.